Okay, I think everybody is in now. So good morning, everybody, and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today on day one of our 2021 Collaborative Learning Day. This event is co-hosted by the First Nations Public Service Secretariat and the BC Federal Council. So my name is Liam Campbell. I'm going to be hosting this event for everybody, and I'm originally from Prince George, BC, and I've recently moved to Edmonton, Alberta. I work for the federal government for our regional recruitment initiative, and I'd like to start off by acknowledging the land on which I am joining this meeting from today is Treaty 6 territory, and is the traditional territory of the Cree, Dene, Stoney Nakoda, Saulteaux, and Ojibwe peoples. And I'd also like to recognize that there are many of us joining from many different territories today. If you guys would like, feel free to post where you're joining from today in the chat. And before we get started, before I pass it over to Elder Francois Prince, we're going to go to Michelle Gomez just for some instructions on Zoom. So Michelle, if you're ready, feel free to come on and tell us about Zoom, please.
Yes, thank you, Liam. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Gomez. I will be providing Zoom support for today's meeting. Before I talk about Zoom, I want to acknowledge that I work and reside in North Vancouver, BC, which is located on the traditional unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I'm just going to take a few minutes today to review the basic functionality of Zoom to ensure that everyone can interact during question and answer portions of the meeting. Please also be advised that this meeting is being recorded for note-taking purposes. If you could all please take a look at the bottom of your screen, I'm going to quickly run through the various functions you'll use for today's meeting. At the left-hand corner, you will see the mute button. This controls your audio. If you could please keep yourself muted to avoid interruption and background noise. Please only unmute yourself when you're actively speaking today and the MC has indicated it's your turn. Next to that is the video start and stop button. You can choose to keep your video on or off during the meeting, but I do encourage turning it on when you're actively speaking today. Next to that is the participant list button. Clicking on that will display a list of participants just to the right of your screen. If you could go ahead and click that, I want to bring your attention specifically to the row of small icons at the bottom of the participant list. You should perhaps see an icon that looks like a blue hand or perhaps a raise hand button. During question and answer, the MC will ask attendees to raise their hand and speak during question and answer portions of the meeting today. Please use that little blue hand button to indicate you would like to speak. Doing this will push your name to the top of the participant list and display where you are in queue for the MC today. I'd actually like to have everyone try that out now. If you could find the raise hand button and go ahead and click it for me. Wonderful, thank you so much. Great, it looks like everyone's finding it well. Next to that is the group chat button. Clicking on that will open a chat box just to the right of your screen. Everyone has the ability to contribute to the group chat. You can send a message or document files to everyone or individually. I will be monitoring this throughout the meeting. Should you have any other questions, please feel free to include them in there. I'm also going to show you how to adjust your view today. If you look at the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a button that says View. This button will adjust your view to either displaying multiple participants in a grid view, hide the non-video participants, and/or view a single person actively speaking. Please choose the view that is suitable for you. Lastly, during breaks, you do not need to log out of the meeting, just mute and turn off your video. If you happen to leave the meeting, you can use the same Zoom link in your confirmation email. That's it for my Zoom intro. Again, please feel free to message me directly in the group chat if you have any questions. I will also list my email in the group chat should you leave the meeting and need help getting back in. Back over to you, Liam.
Great, thank you, Michelle. And so now next we're going to go over to Elder Francois Prince for some opening remarks. So Elder Prince, thank you for joining us today, and go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you for having me. My name is Francois Prince. I'm from Nakasley, which is Dakas territory in central BC, which is in Fort St. James and surrounding areas. And I belong to the Beaver clan, Samashu. And today I would like to open in a prayer for gatherings and just a couple of quick words on some some, I don't know, words of encouragement, I guess, for your day and future up ahead, for you guys. But I'd like to open with a prayer that my dad wrote out, and it's a prayer for gathering. So I'll say it in my language first, and then I'll translate it. Nezalcho, sucho neusilza, duchaza hanatzosdil, ne bachtane in kesdel choyin kadilzine bata, ni babaya stiltak, when hilaziane neusilza. Daila khanibe hotni ne toda ne bahaya stakazdi. Queen doya hodisal, and hila and it naikne negani benelsi. Igala naste hilkaswe oyashe hadil. Asha in kadane naste iga hatediji. Izalto asha and di and ka ne bain la eats ia woods lehet nagaunenai. Di and got bangan a kote hanai that I tanto dachte. And it's as tan was nana ne bain la. Asha in kadilzine was na ba hote. Nezalto the hopatatni. Benea tiltakne. Tiao ne kohte ne na hanur en. Et hawala naste tiane suhatiril. Wasna is ninsan. Nasti ne tabehun chikla hole. Et hawa neusita. Et ne gahon ashen gesen tahone masin tsapni. Great Spirit, listen well to us as we gather to put words forward for the good of our people and Mother Earth, and in doing so, we speak for the feelings of all who would listen and take heed. We sanction the wisdom of words our elders spoke past and present. They have spoken, and hopefully these words will be implanted into the minds of our present generation, for all people to encourage them towards the survival that is so necessary. Great Spirit, you have truly given us the responsibility to protect what you have created to sustain life on this earth. You've shown us to respect the forests, the rivers, the lakes, the mountains, and all the plants and wildlife, so important to all the people. Great Spirit, we ask that you give us and all who speak sanctity and wisdom from our past for encouragement to go forward into the future. We believe that all people on earth will go further into the turmoils of the future bravely if they listen now. Great Spirit, grant us the wisdom to impart the concerns of the past, make a better future. I thank you. Hone. You know, this prayer has been kind of like a stepping stone for me to really stay grounded in my language and my culture, and and thinking about preservation and connection that it has in the translations are a lot more powerful in the language than they are in English. And you know, when we look back at the language taken from us from the residential school and how it's coming back to us and how we're able to revive our language and culture again in a safe place. And, you know, honoring the recovered children from the residential schools that they found. You know, Mother Earth was kind to us and brought those children for us to take care of now that we have our ceremonies, our language and stuff, and it's safe for them to come home. So we have that responsibility now. But many of us already know what's needed and what's wanted. We all have an opinion. Everybody has an opinion, whether you're Aboriginal or First Nations or non-First Nations or any right around the world. All of the opinions that are coming forth give us a sense of identity on who we are as people. And you know, you have to prioritize yourself and really think about who you are to make the right decisions now, to make the right decisions for yourself and your surrounding community and your future and your families. When you prioritize yourself, you really need to stay in the present. You know, stay grounded in the present, because as soon as something happens from the past, like finding all of those children buried in Kamloops even, and right across Canada, but it causes us to look backwards in history. And when we do that, we kind of lose focus on the future because we're not looking at the future anymore. So we kind of open up a doorway into the past, and there's just so much shadows in there that we kind of start losing a little bit of light on what we to stay in the present. So that's what I really encourage is to know that if you're feeling confused about the future, it's because we're probably looking at the past. So if we stay in the present, like one of the war veterans that we have and that we had, the last surviving war veteran was named Salamo. And he told us that when he was fighting in the front lines, that they came to certain checkpoints. And at each checkpoint, they were asked 3 questions. And if they couldn't answer those 3 questions, they were forced to stop fighting and go back. But if they answered the 3 questions, they were allowed to keep fighting. So this kind of battle that we're in now, we need to ask ourselves those 3 questions. Where did you come from? Where are you now? And where are you going? You know, and when we prioritize where we came from and we know where we came from, where we're at and where we're going, and then we can stay firm and we can keep fighting the good fight. But if we lose focus on ourselves in the present, then we're going to end up having to stop the fight, and then we have to recenter ourselves. So pay attention to yourself, your own body. You know, the heat, you have to stay hydrated, you know, food, yeah, make sure you do your food, your exercise, all of those little things that you do to take care of yourself in the present are going to cause you to have healthy feelings and healthy thoughts and confidence and courage and wisdom. All of those things will come into play, and all the advice, you'll never have to go and redo anything again. So it's up to us to really center ourselves and create the decisions needed to take care of all of those ones that were lost prior to the residential school up to now. So, you know, if we focus on ourselves, everything that we do, it's going to be healthy. So all the decisions that we make from this point forward are going to be healthy, and they're going to be the right ones. We won't have to go back and fix anything else. So that's my words of encouragement for today, is to take care of yourself. And tomorrow, when I do a closing, I have a really good story that actually takes you back prior to the residential school attitude of our culture and how powerful it really is in love and forgiveness. So I really encourage you guys to look inside yourself, find out, have those answers available for anybody that asks you why you believe what you believe. Where did you come from? Where are you now? And where are you going? So with that, I will leave you guys for your meeting today, and thank you for allowing me to be here. And I'm very honored. On behalf of all of our territory here, I would really send our heart and our prayers out to you guys and your families and your communities. And one of the things that if you guys don't mind, I will mention the work you guys do tonight during the opening of ceremony. We should have a lot of drummers involved. So I would like to mention your guys' hard work and you know, dedication that you guys have. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this whole work that you guys are doing. And I look forward to talking to you guys again tomorrow. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Elder Prince. Thank you for opening our presentation with a prayer, and we appreciate your wise words and you taking some time to be with us today. And so next up, we're going to go to Jihan Casey, who is the director of the First Nations Public Service Secretariat, and Nadine Spence, who is the executive director of Parks Canada and BC Federal Council representative. So over to you two ladies for some opening remarks.
Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well today, and depending on where you are in BC, hopefully keeping somewhat cool. And thank you, Liam, and thank you, Elder Francois, for starting us off in that way. Also for the words that you shared, you know, as we're all dealing with our own personal mixed emotions, I think right now. Thank you very much for those words and starting us that way. And I can see Nadine there. So my name is Diane Casey. I am the director of the First Nations Public Service Secretariat. I am Haida on my father's side, a member of the Skidegud Indian Band, and I'm currently zooming into you from the unceded territory of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam peoples. And I'll send it over to Nadine to introduce herself as well.
Good morning, Jihan. Good morning, everyone. And thank you very much, Elder Prince, for starting us off in such a good way and sharing such important words with us. Parks Canada. So I am the Executive Director of Operations for Parks Canada's BC and Yukon region. And I'm also the co-chair of the BC Federal Council's Indigenous Interests and Issues Committee. It's a real pleasure to be with you all here today on this in this really exciting space, and I'm really excited for you all with the lineup of speakers that you have before you, panelists and breakout sessions, and I wish you success in your day. Jihan?
Thanks, Nadine. I echo that as well. I think it looks like it's a great day shaping up for you guys. And I'm particularly thrilled, I know Nadine is as well, to be here on this collaborative learning day. It's a collaboration between the federal government, the BC Federal Council, and the First Nations Public Service Secretariat. And it's that collaborative is really important. It's everything that we do in our relationship that we have under the Strengthening Public Service Institutions Initiative. That's a mouthful. We are just so thrilled to be able to do this work together, to bring together First Nations learners, people from working in First Nation administrations, and learners from the federal public service as well. I can see some of your videos are on, some of your videos are off. I know I recognize a bunch of names, but if you have a chance to put in the chat, I saw a couple people doing so, please keep adding where you're from. If you work for the federal government or if you work for a First Nation, if we were doing this in person as we had done a few years ago, for the first time we ran a day similar to this, that this came from, we were all able to connect and mingle, and I think there's a lot of learning done. So I hope you're able to do that a little bit today as well. And today is just one of the initiatives under this MOU initiative that we do together. Other things that we've done has been supporting First Nations through COVID. We set up a website and held one-pagers as well as town halls to get information out. We have information coming forward. We've done other learning in project management, conflict resolution, all of these things we've done jointly. So today is just one example of where we try to bring two groups of people together to learn from each other and hopefully learn from the wonderful speakers that we have today.
Well, Jihan, I'd like to echo your excitement for this collaborative day and share with everyone from a federal perspective that we have a priority for strengthening and deepening capacity around our collective knowledge in order to work, respectfully and effectively with Indigenous peoples, including better understanding our shared history and the consequences of that, and how they play out today, and what we, as the elder reminds us, what we need to work towards for tomorrow, a better tomorrow. As well, I speak on behalf of all my federal government colleagues when I say it's a real privilege to work with the First Nations Public Service Secretariat on this initiative and others. And it's a unique and powerful opportunity to learn and share experiences, share knowledge, share points of collaboration, and hopefully as well uncover areas where we can continue to improve and to make that visible to all of us so that we can take the actions necessary to continue to create that better future that Elder Prince talked about. So I really wish you a successful and fun and great learning experience over the next couple of days. And it was a real privilege to be with you here just for a short while.
Thanks. Everything Nadine said, I double it, absolutely. And before we get going, I just wanted to take a quick second on behalf of, I think Nadine and I, and so many of us, to recognize a few of the people that brought today together. Liam, first of all, who's going to be leading you through the day. Thank you so much for your time today and getting our workshop going and making sure we stay on track. We had a committee of both First Nations and public servants that came together to plan today. So how all the topics were decided, what speakers were important. They very generously gave their time, and their employers very generously gave their time to meet, I think, weekly, if not more often, and provide input and make sure today was going to be as useful as possible. So Kathy Murphy from the Fort Nelson Nation, Marianne Andralit from the Upper Nicola Band, Madeline Quinn from Canada Revenue Agency, Larry Schutter from Service Canada, Emily Padane from PSC, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but thank you so much for all of the work that you've done so far. And there's a few other people that have kind of stepped up to help us out, again, really off the side of their desks, which is so appreciated. Kayla Urin and Elsa Doxtator Jansen, who really gave their time, and again, their employers gave their time to help with the communications, the planning, the event coordination, everything it takes to get you here. And then there's two key individuals that work on absolutely everything we do on this initiative. Amory Adrian, who is from the First Nations Public Service Secretariat, and Colette Anderson from the BC Federal Council, who have worked diligently to bring today together. So I wanted to make sure to recognize all of their names. I think a number of you are in the room. Thank you so much for your time. And with that, I'll see if Nadine has any last bits to add, but I just want to wish you an absolutely fabulous day, and I hope it's really productive. I think over to you, Leah. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks so much, Jihan and Nadine. Thank you for opening up this session for us today. We really appreciate you guys being here. And so before we get into our panel, I'm just going to go over our schedule for the next 2 days. So just a reminder that all of the events are going to be recorded for you guys. And so our plan for today is we're going to have our opening panel about human resources, which is about current realities and charting the path forward. Followed by that, we'll have a short break at 10:45. Or sorry, we'll have a short break, and then at 10:45, we'll come back and go into some breakout sessions. And then later this afternoon at noon, we have an optional networking event for everybody over on Kumo Space. And then for tomorrow, we're going to have another exciting day. We have some more breakout sessions, followed by a presentation by Dr. Little Bear. And then at the end of the day, we'll have some door prizes, which is exciting, and then some closing remarks from our elders. And with that being said, we'll start to go into our opening panel. And so on our panel today, we're going to have 4 panelists, I believe. So we have Leona Baptiste from the Osoyoos Indian Band. We have Jennifer Wiegele from Mathews, Dinsdale, and Clark. Melissa Morden from Employment and Social Development Canada, as well as Sunny Wong from the CRA. And I want to thank all the panelists for being here today. And so now we'll give our attention to you for some opening remarks. And after all of our panelists have introduced themselves, we'll go into some questions. And if any of our participants have any questions during the panel, feel free to post them in the chat and I'll ask them on your behalf. And with that being said, maybe we'll hand it over to Leona to introduce herself first, and then we'll go through the panelists individually. So Leona, if you're ready, feel free to come on camera.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So my name is Leona Baptiste. I work for the Osoyoos Indian Band. I have for a number of years now, and I'm also a member of the Chief and Council Board for the last 8 terms. Great. It's always been an honor to be able to participate with public service, and it's great to see a lot of faces that I recognize. So looking forward to the next couple of days, and thank you for having me.
Perfect. Thank you, Leona. And next we'll go to Jennifer.
Rookie error. Good morning. I'm coming to you from the unceded territory of the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish people in Vancouver, and I'm delighted to be here. I'm a labor and employment lawyer for the last 17 years, and for the last 10 of that, I have sort of specialized in working with Indigenous clients on governance and workplace matters. And I'm thrilled to be here on this panel today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next up is Melissa.
Hi there, my name is Melissa. I am a health and safety officer with the Federal Labor Program, and I would like to acknowledge that I am calling in from the traditional unceded territories of the Stalo, Matsqui, Sumas, and Lakamo First Nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. And finally, we'll go to Sunny.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sunny Wong, and I am zooming in here and joining you all from the unceded territory of the Coast Salish, the Squamish, Musqueam peoples. And I am a registered clinical counselor. I am an employee of the Canada Revenue Agency, and I work for them as a coordinator counselor, providing counseling services and consultation to our employees and to our management. So thanks for having me.
Perfect. Okay, thank you everybody for introducing yourselves. So unless anybody has any other opening remarks they'd like to make, maybe we'll just hop into the questions right away here. So panelists, feel free to jump in whenever you have an answer for us, or if you have anything to add, feel free to raise your hand or just go ahead. So we'll go to question number 1. So what has been the biggest impact on HR as a result of the past 16 months of COVID? And in particular, those issues we will need to be aware of and managing as we move forward. Jennifer, go ahead.
I can get us started on that. I think as we were discussing this issue or the questions in preparing for this, I honestly feel like the biggest single issue, and we're really, I think, almost seeing it now, oddly, given that, things are improving right now, but it's been mental health. And I think that I'm observing, certainly in the work I do, that some of the issues that are coming to me really are just a product of a lot of the usual things that are caused by what we've all experienced collectively in the last 15, 16 months. And I think the thing that's become really clear to me is that we're not in workplaces, we don't have the tools, and we're not sort of empowered to talk about these issues in a way that prevents them from becoming big problems that end up sort of reaching formalized complaints that will sort of end up coming to me as a lawyer. And I think that I was laughing as I was reflecting on going to school in the 80s, and mental health was rarely talked about, and laughing at how much time we spent learning geometry and shapes and maps, but we didn't develop a language to talk about mental health, and I think we still don't. And I think this pandemic has taught us that that this is really important stuff. And I think that there are some takeaways from this in the form of lessons we can learn that apply not just to times of crisis, and that if managers and supervisors and people in workplaces weren't so afraid to talk about mental health and approach it and address it, and we're a little more sort of familiar with the legal framework and what they can and can't ask, or what they can and can't say, I think there's a lot of fear around talking about it, and so that prevents people from even having the conversation. I think we would prevent and avoid a lot of issues before they become real issues, and so I think that's been a really big turning point takeaway for me.
Perfect. And did anyone else on the panel have anything they'd like to add to Jennifer's answer?
It's Leona here. So one of the things that I noticed with on the grounds working with the First Nation was one of the biggest impact is getting, like Jennifer said, it was like the mental health aspect with the employees having that better relationship with their managers and their supervisors, you know, that line of empathy, and as well as putting things which would normally be a strong no, no, you can't do this, or no, you can't work from home, and actually really shaping what does that really fundamentally look like for the employer to allow their staff to work from home, putting together the tangible measures to make sure that people are still reaching all of their goals that is needed from the employer. So creating that more of a dialogue, it really forced the supervisors and managers completely out of their comfort zone the last couple of months and be like, what do you mean I have to talk to my staff? What do you mean I have to put this framework? And it really helped shape a stronger working relationship, I found, with the employer, with the managers and the supervisors, and allowing the staff to say yes when the schools were shut down. It was an automatic. Working through all of it was saying, yes, your children are home. We understand. You're going to work from home for this week. Or here, we're going to frame this out. You're going to come in on a collective once a week, a half a day, and keeping those staff rotated, just so if they needed to be in the office and hold out meetings. So it was a lot about organizing in the last couple of months, making sure things stayed streamlined. People were still making their deadlines and everything was being completed. I have some notes here on the side here. I think one of the things was the biggest pack within the HR aspect, just because we're so used to having people come in our offices. Now having additional staff come in and do the front screening for us, you know, people, of course, you had people who were so COVID scared, and you had people who were lax on it, saying, what's the big deal? We don't have COVID here, or, you know, you guys are being ridiculous. But having the additional staff brought in was actually the opposite, because people were laying people off. We were hiring more people to make sure that we had the resources and the availability for us at all times. So that was one of the things that we had a huge impact in our offices, and that's something we're going to continue to do. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Leona. Melissa or Sunny, did you have anything to add? If not, we can move on to question 2.
I can add to that. You know, I just exactly like Jennifer and Leona had talked about mental health, of course. You know, as a counselor who's been working in the field, we know, I mean, even as an individual, as part of our community, we know that mental health is such an important thing, even before the entire pandemic, right? This has happened before. We all have mental health. We all might experience mental illness as well. And so this has been something that's happening just because we're human beings. This is part of who we are. And COVID and, you know, the sudden shift and sudden stop and all of these things has really just highlighted all these impacts of mental health and mental illness within the workplace, which has always been there. We've just it's not ever been highlighted to the extent that it is now, because of everything that shifted and changed. And so I think a big thing that I've seen and my team has seen throughout the time is to exactly like what Leona and Jennifer said. A lot of managers, a lot of supervisors don't feel equipped. They don't have the language, just as Jennifer said, right? This is not part of typical formal education. We don't talk about feelings. We don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about any of these things in school. It's very basic things that we do as human beings, but we've kind of lost touch with that. And a lot of our supervisors, a lot of our managers who maybe have worked in the system for a long time have gotten used to that system of working kind of in a siloed aspect, right? They work in a managerial little HR or, you know, these different pockets where we don't necessarily see and understand an individual as a whole, and understand that as a whole, part of that is their mental health that we need to, you know, of course, as a manager, as a supervisor, we don't expect any of you to be a mental health professional for your team members, right? But having a basic understanding of mental illness, mental health, what that looks like, some of the languaging around that, even being open to having a conversation or to even listen to someone who might be struggling is a really big piece that I work with a lot of supervisors and managers, because if this isn't something that we are used to, it's like learning a new language, right? It's like learning, as if if you didn't know French and you're trying to learn French for the first time, you're gonna kind of stumble through it, you're gonna fumble through these words, you're gonna have a hard time listening and picking up that language. It's the same thing with mental health, mental illness, our feelings, our emotions. If people bring that to you and you're not used to listening to it, it might feel really weird and strange. And so it's really getting ourselves to be comfortable with that, learning that language and hearing and understanding what it is to be a human being, to have these emotions, to have mental health and mental illness, and really navigate those for ourselves so that when people do come to us, we feel ready and open to having these conversations.
Great, thank you, Sunny. Melissa, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yes, I do. So I'm coming from this from a bit of a different perspective from the other panelists. So in my work, so we are there to make sure that employers are ensuring the safety of their employees. And so with the impact of COVID in the workplace, there are a lot of kind of additional duties being put on the employer. And I know that especially in these times when you have employees not coming in and kind of changing workforce, that alone can be very tricky. So we have provided some resource material and that kind of thing. And I just want to make sure that all of the attendees understand that from the occupational health and safety perspective, the labor program can actually provide some support and some guidance to kind of guide you in the right direction and make sure that you know exactly what does need to be done on behalf of the employer. So, thank you.
Great. Oh, Leona, did you have something to add?
I just wanted to kind of go off what Melissa had said. That was one of the things that we were faced here with the Osoyoos Indian Band, like within our operational businesses, that fear of COVID and reaching out to those resources, because the fears create rumors, right? Where our staff were like, this employer is not following safety practices, they have the list of saying that we're not doing, not the spacing, no signage, no sanitizer, no mask. So that is so true, though, from that working from the health and safety aspect of things for our staff, and that constant reassurance that these are the measures, these are the real tangible steps that we are doing as an employer to keep you protected, and which creates that, that anxiety, that mental health, and it really kind of simmers it down a bit. And also having clear fundamentals, like having a pandemic plan put in place. Yes, everything was on the fly. We all know, we were all watching the news, bleeding every week after week with Bonnie Henry, but really making sure that it was clear information and not misinterpreted information about new practices that are being followed next. So, and that was one of the really things that we're continuously having, that communication with our supervisors and our staff. And it's not such a pushback now saying, masks in public places, sanitizing, checking at the door. People have now become adapt to it over the months. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Great. Thank you, panelists, for answering that question. So we'll go on to the next one here. So the challenges around mental health have really come to the forefront over the past year of the pandemic. And I imagine that there's probably some anxiety about returning to the workplace. Do you guys have any tips or best practices you would like to share with managers or any support staff? Any tips that you have for people returning to the workplace?
I can start us off. With anxiety, I think it's important that we acknowledge it. I think a lot of times, sometimes things get brushed off, right? When people feel anxious, when people are feeling a little bit scared, oftentimes it's, what are you scared about? There's nothing, there's no problem. And oftentimes it can get brushed off or like brushed under the rug in that sense. And so a big piece of it is really acknowledging it. With anything, with emotions, with mental health, mental illness, it's so important for us to acknowledge what's going on, for us to understand and hear what the person is experiencing, so that it helps them feel less alone in whatever that emotion might be, whether it's anxiety, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness. If we can acknowledge it, if we can see it, if we can be a witness and a person who is there with that person, it helps ease that anxiety right away. Another big piece of it is we know that change, whether it's change for good or bad, anytime there's change, it's hard. It's hard to deal with. And so really acknowledging that for people and acknowledging and saying, hey, this is another change. Even though, we're going back at whatever that means, it's still a change. It's been 16 months. We've learned to do routines in a different way. So acknowledging that change is really important. One thing that I've always been telling supervisors and managers is, basically for the last 16 months, we've been told to be cautious about the air that we're breathing. Like feeling cautious and feeling anxious is really kind of a line in the sand, and it's really easy for us to slip one way or the other. And so if anyone is feeling anxious about it, it's because we've basically been told to feel anxious about it. So acknowledging that it's okay, it's normal. This is what literally everyone in the world is facing right now. And so if we can normalize it for people, it helps ease that anxiety, knowing that they're not alone in that.
Great, thank you, Sunny. Any other panelists would you like to add?
Yeah, I was just a bit of a different angle on it. I joked last year that the question of 2020 was, I'm scared to come back to work, and how an employer is to respond to that. And that was an issue that was faced by a lot of employers after sort of our kind of soft lockdown, when there was sort of a comeback to work, but not in full. And some people just sort of didn't want to. And it was really challenging for employers to suss out, is this a legitimate, is there a concern I need to accommodate from a legal perspective, or is there an occupational health and safety issue that I need to address? Or is this simply resistance because the person prefers to work at home and legitimately they can't actually do their job from home? There's certain jobs that just don't lend themselves to remote work. So that issue is arising again. And so the quick sort of takeaway from the legal perspective is the question engages two legal issues. One of them is an issue of accommodation under the human rights legislation, which is, is the person raising an issue that actually engages the duty to accommodate under human rights legislation? And that is to say, do they have a legitimate health issue, or someone at home with a health issue? And that's a less of a concern now with vaccines, and the fact that the uptake has thankfully been quite high. But that's an issue, and it's complicated. So I understand that there's a breakout session, so plug for that. There's an accommodation breakout session, so I won't go into the wormhole on accommodation, but it is an important issue. And so the sort of, I'm flagging for you that in the anxiety of returning to work, there's an accommodation question. Now, not everyone's going to be eligible for accommodation. The mere fact of being anxious about a return to work does not engage the duty to accommodate, but one needs to consider it, and it's a complicated issue. And if there's any question about that, I would encourage you to attend the session on that. And the second issue is occupational health and safety. So some people will say the workplace isn't safe, and the way to deal with that is you put back to them, well, what is it that you say isn't safe? And you inspect it, and if it meets what is the current sort of occupational health and safety standards, then you tell them so. And then I guess the third issue that sort of builds on this is, now that we have vaccines, a question I've been getting a lot is it permissible to make people vaccinate to come back to work? And what I say is, well, in very small amount of cases, it's permissible to say you can't come back unless you're vaccinated. But for the most part, it is much more permissible to say, if you don't want to vaccinate, you need to wear a mask or some other measure. And there's a funny balance to be had there. And I think Melissa can speak to this a little bit about the delicate position that employers are in to balance the health and safety of many and the rights of some individuals. And sometimes those rights will come into conflict, and that gets really complicated. And so those are issues that I'm flagging them because I don't want to monopolize time on these complicated issues, but these are issues I'm seeing in that issue, like this, the issues of anxiety and dealing with them on an individual level are one aspect of it. And obviously, compassion, kindness, the language, the conversations, but there are also legal issues that these things touch on. And I understand they'll be dealt with in some of the breakout sessions.
And Leona, do you want to add something?
I do. So just going back to Jennifer saying that's something that actually I've reached out for, like it is true because people are starting to, there's anti-vaxxers and then there's people who are vaccinated and trying to really keep that dialogue open with both sides saying, well, I'm vaccinated, I no longer want to work with this person. Well, no, unfortunately, that's not how it works. You still follow wearing the mask protocols because it's only this coming week that we're going to be able to have that option, right? So it's really keeping that language that as an individual, they have a right not to be vaccinated. And as an individual, you do have a right, you know? So really making sure that they don't start like that kind of animosity building amongst the staff about who's vaccinated, who is vaccinated. The challenges around the mental health is we've actually had people who are more on the holistic side. So we've been preparing, allowing having more like kind of medicine people working in community. So doing one-on-one sessions with our staff as well as our community to help with the mental health aspect. And we're also having an on-site counselor to work with all of our staff that are rolling into becoming fully returning back to work. So to help with those preventable measures saying, yes, we're needing you to phase back in. It's not going to be 5 days a week automatic, but this week you're going to start on 2 days a week in the office. We're going to see how that goes. You're going to see the counselor, and then goes into 3, 4, into a 5-day work week. So we still have that very flexible work week coming in, but you know, within the next 6 to 8 months, we will have all of our staff fully phased into the operational business. Employers have to really understand it's not going to be an automatic, you're going to have everybody 5 days a week. That's just an unrealistic to obtain that immediately. Ensuring a safe work environment and making sure the managers give extra time for the duties to be completed, because they think in the perfect world, you're in office, it should be done automatically, it should be easy. But dealing with that mental health and that anxiety, just giving them a little bit more extra time to complete their tasks, it reduces that pressure of them having to come back into the fold. So that's some of the things that we've been faced with and challenged, and we're trying to walk through as an employer. And again, it falls back on the same thing: empathy, understanding, and dialogue with your employees, because not every employee has the same issue or the same thing that they're facing.
And Melissa, go ahead.
So I'm just going to touch on something that Jennifer was saying in relation to occupational health and safety and the requirements. So one thing that we've been seeing is there's a lot of employees that do have increased anxiety and kind of nervousness about kind of resuming some of their tasks in the workplace and that kind of thing. And a lot of that stems from kind of just being really close to their feelings about it. And so sometimes it's that they just don't have the actual knowledge of what the legal requirements are for the employer to be undertaking in terms of protecting the workers from COVID or communicable diseases, anything like that. And so sometimes if you're able to show them the resources that you're using, that you're meeting the requirements set out by legislation and public health, all of those things can sometimes help. But if that isn't enough, it's always an option for you to kind of steer them towards contacting the labor program. And then if we get a call or a question from an employee, we can tell them this is what the requirement is for your employer to be meeting. And if they are meeting that, then that is all we will ask of them. And so sometimes just having someone kind of outside of the workplace explain that can be useful.
Okay. And we also have a question in the chat if you guys are ready. So this comes from Janice. She says, I have a question. Loss of life during the pandemic with First Nations was extremely difficult. We had experienced suicide in our communities, and what I am facing is the families/workers who are still here are not coping very well. So maybe just some advice for our First Nations communities on how to deal with the pandemic or loss of life, something like that.
So I know with the Osoyoos and we had a few people that we've lost due to the pandemic and COVID. So of course, people have different belief systems, and what we actually did as a community is provided that support to individuals We allowed a lax schedule from the employers, and to say, if you need that time, giving them additional days for personal days, or to allow it to use own discretions. Also making sure that we have counselors reach out to them, as well as more of the traditional cultural aspect of things, having them reach out to the individuals. But it is not easy. It's not easy to have to walk through that, especially have to go through funeral services in communities that are COVID safe, and ensuring that not additional COVID was spread in communities. So that's a hard one though. All we did was provide mental health counselors, holistic healers to go in to see the family, but not just within that week or 2 weeks when it happens, but it's been a continuous phase. So it's been at least 6 months we've had one particular family work with them.
Great. And would anyone else like to add? If not, that's totally okay.
I can add a little bit to that. Unfortunately, we know that in Canada, the suicide rate in the Indigenous population is higher, even prior to the pandemic. And so we know that that's just the sad reality of a lot of the things that have happened, right? The intergenerational trauma, everything that's happened. We know that that's a leading cause of all of this. And so in terms of the suicide rate in general, there are a lot of resources out there that are there for us that we can utilize, whether it's the crisis lines. There's a specific crisis line for Indigenous peoples who are struggling with thoughts of suicide. And I've used it many times with a lot of clients. Prior to working at the CRA, I used to work with children and youth and a lot of Indigenous youth who struggled with suicide. And so this particular service is called KUUS. I never know how to pronounce it specifically, but it's KUU -US, Crisis Line Society, and they're out of Port Alberni. I think it's Port Alberni, but they service all of BC. Anyone who's Indigenous who is in BC, they will service and help you. And they do a really great job to check in with you. They do follow-ups. And it's really important that we have that follow-up piece, like Leona is saying. It's not, we're not just following up with the family for the first 2 weeks because, that's when we heard about it. But it's that long-term care. A death in general is hard to deal with. We don't get over someone's death or a loss of a loved one right away. And so having that long-term care, especially when it's suicide, making sure that everyone's okay, that the individual who is struggling with that they have that consistent care throughout that time when they are experiencing thoughts and feelings of suicide. And then for the family members too, right? What are things that we can do as family members or friends in the community that can help and support people who might be experiencing that? And so it's really consulting with your mental health professionals in the area, working with your traditional healers, working with your elders and asking them and working to see if there's other things that are helpful, whether it's participating in ceremony, whatever it might be, to approach it not from a single lens, a single area, but in a holistic way, right? I think that's the part of the beauty of a panel like this. We recognize that there's so many aspects and so many complexities within anyone. And so having a different perspective and different parts to address it is really important.
And anyone else like to add? If not, I have another question in the chat we can go to. So this one, maybe Jennifer, you might have a bit more knowledge on this, but so here's a oh, Colette asked on behalf of somebody else. Okay. So what is the employer's responsibility for health and safety when the employee is working from home? I know during the pandemic, we all reacted quickly and did the best we could, but if some employees are now going to be working more permanently from home, as an employer, am I responsible for their home being a safe workplace? And how would you deal with that?
So yeah, I can answer that one just because there's thankfully for us in BC, as opposed to those in Ontario, for example, who, when there are workers working from home, the coverage that is the pooled system we all pay into in BC does not cover those employees, whereas in BC, that's not the case. And we're fortunate enough that there is coverage that extends to workers using their home as a workspace. And what needs to be done as far as obligations is and I'll maybe send a link later. It's a great resource on WorkSafe BC's website, and it is just the tools that you need to do a home check, meaning just the checklist of things that you need to assure yourself of that are in place. And the home check requirement to actually do a physical check was replaced during COVID with it's satisfactory to do a video check. So there is a checklist and there are resources. So I'll send that link along because it's a very good tool. And then as far as, people maybe transitioning to more permanent work at home, there's, I think a more comprehensive form of agreement that needs to be in place with employees, just to sort of ensure that the relationship and the terms surrounding it are clear, but that's a separate issue. That's an employment issue. And then finally, there was one more piece. What was it that I was going to say? Safety. I've lost my train of thought. I'll send the resource on the home checks. Completely, yeah, sorry. It'll come back to me probably when someone else is speaking, but I'll.
Okay, no worries. Go ahead, Melissa.
I know. Ooh, tax write-off. That's it. Sorry, quickly. Is it okay, Melissa? It's just, thank you. It is that there's a rule where if employees are going to be working from home more permanently, they may be able to avail themselves of a tax benefit. That is all. And I'll send that link as well because it's a little known exemption in the Tax Act. And I only know this because I have some tax law friends that say, hey, are the folks that are working at home availing themselves of this? And I thought, well, I don't read the tax code. So anyway, I'll send that along.
Okay, so I was just going to add to what Jennifer was saying. So under the federal requirements, so if you're working for First Nation, for any kind of administration, like nation administration, anything like that, so you'd fall under the federal requirements. And under that, it says that a workplace is any place where you're engaged in work for the employer. So if it's from home, then that's going to be your workplace. And so there are some requirements that you should be considering. And one of the other tools, in addition to what Jennifer was saying, that I would suggest is if you have people working on computers and doing anything like that at home, you should have them do an assessment of their work setup. And so WorkSafe BC does actually have a tool called How to Make Your Computer Workstation Fit You. And so if you have them just kind of go through that wherever they're working, if it's the dining room table or in an actual office in their home, having them set their station up properly will help reduce any additional ergonomic claims that might be coming in for workers' compensation if they're sitting improperly and developing kind of strains and sprains and musculoskeletal injuries. So I would suggest that I will include that tool in case you want to be sharing that with your folks that are working from home. But yes, there is obligation to make sure that what they are doing in that space is still keeping them safe. And one of those things is also to consider the risk of domestic violence, if that is a consideration for any of your employees working from home as well. Thank you.
And I just noticed that we have a hand up in the chat from Brenna Robinson. Brenna, I'm not sure if you want to turn your mic on or type in the chat, but you can go ahead.
Thank you. I just was curious if there's a difference because, so number one, I know like as a federal employee, I'm covered. I don't know even if I follow the labor code or if I follow the BC Employment Standards Act, it doesn't really matter because I'm unionized. But my office, however, where I'm an elected counselor for, my staff, so I have non-Indigenous staff and I have Indigenous staff. And I'm not sure where they fall under, if they fall under the Labor Code of Canada or if they fall under the BC Employment Standards Act, or is there a variation? And I don't know what the differences are between the two acts. And those are kind of the things that we're trying to figure out right now. So I don't know if you have some help or some tips or advice.
Yeah, go ahead.
I love jurisdiction. Sorry, it's just Brenna, is your question with respect to health and safety specifically, or just the more broad what legislation is applicable to my employees?
Yeah, it is under the legislate, like I know like Work Safe BC and such, and then, but I also don't know what's going to happen like come the fall with the COVID guidelines and such, when we don't have the public officers directing us, telling us what we have to do. Then what's going to happen, and what is there going to be, you know, like I don't know where we turn to, because things seem to get so mixed and intertwined in our communities. Like, and some things it's like, oh, okay, we're going to follow the labor code now for this, and now we're going to follow that. Like, it's, so I get so confused, and I just like, I think it needs to be fair, and they just, like, it's either we're going to do it this way or we're going to do it that way. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we do need to zig and zag. I would rather have one way or the other, but maybe it's both. I'm not sure.
So, okay, I see a question in the chat box about health and safety. So I'll just quickly, so health and safety, for all federally regulated workplaces, you're in for a real treat, because you both pay into the WorkSafe paid insurance scheme that covers, you know, the province. And so you pay into this, and great, because you're covered by the insurance. And then they have a comprehensive suite of legislation that is, you know, occupational health and safety regulations is really thick. But then WorkSafe gets really funny about having jurisdiction over like reserves and First Nations workplaces as far as inspections and enforcement and things like that. But I always say that the regulations in there are pretty gold standard. But now in the interim, and Melissa can speak to this, there's part 2 of the Canada Labour Code, which governs occupational health and safety for federal employers. Now, there's no such thing as a pooled scheme for federal employers other than for a narrow sliver of public servants. So you can forget about that, like it's not applicable to you. But there are occupational health and safety regulations in the Canada Labour Code. They're not quite as extensive or specific in some respects. But they have been beefed up, and there has been a recent introduction of violence and harassment prevention, which is, I would say, more broad and more sort of onerous for compliance than WorkSafe's bullying and harassment. And so the joy you have is you both apply to you in a sense. And so that's health and safety, that's complicated. And so I'll park that. Like, you have both, and both apply. And I would always say that when in doubt, like following the provincial occupational health and safety legislation will never steer you wrong. It's well developed, it's comprehensive, it's very specific. Now, in the broader sense, I get this question a lot in communities, is sometimes there'll be federally regulated employees, and alongside them, whether it's that they work for the Economic Development Corporation, or whether they work for the school that's under a society perhaps, or a daycare that's sort of, again, operated perhaps a different entity, not through the band council, might be provincially regulated, or field employees who might be doing something that's very much provincially regulated. The problem is the employer really wants to treat people evenly, or to do things in a similar manner. And there is a way to do that. You go through sort of both, and you do a one size fits all, but these are decisions you make and elections you make, and jurisdiction is notoriously complicated. But the simple rule of thumb is, generally speaking, if employees are employed by the band council, and it's they are engaged in the delivery of services through the band in the community, that's probably going to be a federally regulated employee. And otherwise, it's a maybe. That's me dumbing it right down to its most basic. But it is an important question, because there are lots of rights and entitlements attached to federally regulated employees that a lot of employers don't realize. And so, but then for creating policy too, there's questions of even-handedness. And so I tried to simplify that as much as possible, but I hope maybe I hit on some of the questions, or I answered some of the questions you had.
You did, thank you.
Great. Melissa, did you have anything you wanted to add to that at all, or?
Well, like Jennifer said, jurisdiction is quite a tricky circumstance. And so one of the best things you can do is to be making contacts with other nations and other employers kind of similar to you, that have already kind of navigated this whole kind of dual jurisdiction circumstance that you are often dealing with in a First Nation environment. So it is very possible that you will have to have policies in place that meet the provincial requirements and the federal requirements for some circumstances. And we do know from the federal side that it is very complicated in terms of trying to sort out who falls under what, and it is so challenging for all of you. And we do understand that, but unfortunately, it's just as complicated for us trying to sort it out. And so sometimes just contacting us and we can kind of walk you through it might be the easiest way to approach things.
Great, thank you. So maybe we'll go back. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, so maybe we'll just go back to the questions we had sent you guys before. So we'll go to number 2. So beyond that important aspect of mental health and wellness, what are some best practices and considerations as we manage the current transition and prepare for some of us returning to the workplace? I know we've touched on it a little bit, but I'm not sure if you guys have anything you'd like to add.
Oh, well, if no one's going, just quickly, there's this observation. I don't know if anyone's experiencing this, but I'm getting a lot of calls about people saying that there's people who after 16 months are very much attached to continuing to work from home. And some people who are just dying to get back to the office. And I'm finding that the overlap between who is suited to working from home and who can do it effectively and the desire to come back or stay are not matched. So meaning that employers are now having to make really, really difficult decisions about who then is a suitable candidate for continued working from home and who is not. And how do I slice and dice this up in a fair manner that is principled, transparent, defensible? And so I've been working with some communities to develop like a set of criteria that is effectively embedded in a policy, and encouraging them to take those criteria and work through them with the person, answer the questions, and then sort of paper it up and make a decision so that everybody who's forced to answer this question goes through the same inquiry about whether or not the arrangement to continue working from home is suitable for that person given their circumstances, and given the sort of criteria that answer that question effectively, so that at the end of the day, there isn't this ill will of, well, so-and-so got this arrangement and that's because they're close to their manager or they're related, or so-and-so got this, but they don't deserve it because, and then it's just, and of course, on top of the fact that you have the criteria and you paper the file and you give the person a good reason, there has to be some messaging in the broader workplace about the basis on which these decisions get made, so that people do feel like there's a fair system in play that everyone is applying. And that's one of the hardest things I've seen people grapple with right now.
And would anyone else like to add to that? If not, we can go to the next question. Okay. So as a follow-up to that question, what are some considerations to support those who are currently working from home or will continue to work from home or will have a hybrid of office and home work? So any tips for those employees?
I can just give a little bit. So as I've mentioned already, so in this kind of transition, so you still do have obligations to make sure people working from home are safe in what they are doing there. It's also something to consider. So as you have people coming back into the workplace, you need to make sure your safety committee, if you require one, is functioning, is meeting if they can, virtually or in the workplace. So you're going to want to make sure kind of those safety things that might not have been happening while the pandemic was kind of in full-blown concern. And you'll want to make sure that those things are kind of picking up as you're returning to work, and making sure that the monthly inspections are happening and all of that kind of thing. So just make sure that you're considering those kind of additional burdens as well.
So I just wanted to add, one of the things that we've been able to manage is actually making sure that people who are in the hybrid offices or working from home, that they do have the technology that meets the requirements of their job. So different software programming, making sure that IT helps with the connections. So it kind of goes like in a two-way street. So one, making sure that they have their desktops and everything that requires to do their job and their printers at home. That was one of the steps that we made to kind of make sure it was a really flow through. So, but it, you know, again, it just comes back to that communication back to the manager or the employees, or if that manager and employee don't have a good relationship, that you add in another third party to come in and try piecemeal what is actual, what do they need, or is the manager being unreasonable? So I think providing that another additional support in there really helps the situation, you know, but so it's collaborative, everybody makes a decision together, but more importantly, make sure that they have the connections, the IT support, as well as the technology to be able to keep the hybrid office operating and functional.
Mhm.
Perfect. Anyone else would like to add to that one? If not, we can go to the final question. Okay, maybe we'll go to the last one then. So are there any HR related practices or tools you used during COVID that you would continue to bring post-pandemic?
I'll go. For post-pandemic, I think keeping people in the hybrid offices, that's something that we are looking at keeping as more of a permanent, it's more functional for the staff that are able to work from home. Again, more of like keeping additional staff on to help with like even the janitorials within our offices, keeping surfaces down, the cleaning areas, like those are just kind of like housekeeping items, but keeping them on staff more so than we already have our services. And also too, with this, because people haven't been able to travel, is the Zoom Teams meetings. It has saved an immense amount of travel budget for our operational business, because a lot of things that we'd have to fly to Vancouver, fly to Toronto for, or even participate in a learning session. This is amazing. We can, it's at the comfort of our own offices or out of our own home, and it's not any less valuable. So those are the kind of things that I would love to see continued, is those online learning aspects. We've done that with work safety scene with harassment bullying. We're like, how are we going to train our staff? Perfect. We went on a Teams meeting and it was actually accountable and everybody had to be engaged. You cannot have people like kind of check out, so to speak, while they're doing the training. So it's something that we're going to be keeping up here.
And we have another question in the chat if you guys are ready. So do you guys have any tips for having emotional or more personal conversations with your employees over Zoom? It's harder to do virtually and can seem very cold. Yep, go ahead, Jennifer.
I have, I do sometimes workplace investigations, and it's common for generally the complainant to have some tears or some emotion during the interview as they're recounting their story of what's gone wrong. And the first few times it happened over Zoom, you know, I knew what to do with it in the room, and I felt very ill-equipped to deal with it over the screen. And over time, I think as people have gotten more accustomed to screens, you realize that there are ways to substitute what would have been touch or things that humans can do, little things in proximity to one another that alleviate people's suffering, that allows you to sort of sympathetically sort of bear witness to what they're going through. They can translate to a screen's awkward, but I think the answer is that there's no formula. It just takes practice to express the sort of empathy or the feeling that you wanted to express through other means over a screen. It's and everyone, it must come through in a authentic to you kind of manner. So everyone's got to just get over the discomfort and awkwardness of the first few times they're working through it. Just you eventually get to the other side, and it's possible. So it's not a very scientific answer, but I think that's just what I can share from this past weird 16 months of trying to do stuff over Zoom.
I can add to that. Just as Jennifer said, we all kind of shifted to this. If you never did Zoom or Teams or whatever, any sort of video conferencing, this is a new platform for you. This is new technology for you. Like, this is a new skill. So like, it takes time to learn. It takes time to, this is not a replacement in a sense, but it's another tool that we can use. And learning something new is, again, we're going to stumble and fumble through it. It's going to be a little bit awkward. That's fine. Acknowledge it for what it is and learn and grow from that. The other piece that I always tell managers and supervisors is, just because we have a tool doesn't mean we have to use it. And so if you feel like Zoom is going to be awkward, or if you feel like, or if the employee has said, I don't actually want to do a video conference, can we do a phone call instead? That there's nothing wrong with going back and using other technology and other tools, right? Teams and Zoom are just another tool that we can use, but again, it's the can use. What else is in your toolbox, right? Figure that piece out. Another piece that I want to add is in the modality of therapy that I practice, one of the things that we talk about is called just making the implicit explicit and making the explicit experiential. And so, and what that really means is, in this relationship, especially if it's over Zoom or if it's over the telephone, as we all know, we don't get the physical touch. We don't get, especially if you don't see, if there's no visual and it's just a telephone, we don't get to see people's facial features. We don't know what their body language is like. We have no idea. Ask, right? What's going on for you? I hear that you took a big sigh or a deep breath. Can you let me know what's happening for you? And even highlighting your relationship with them. If you see someone who's really struggling, acknowledge that. I see that that you just kind of took a deep breath there, or it looks like you are holding back tears. What's happening? And even being explicit about the relationship, saying, hey, I know I can't necessarily see you like I'm seeing you in front of me, but I do see you and I do witness that. Or even asking questions like, can you feel my presence here with you? Can you feel that I'm here to support you? And making that relationship really, really explicit, rather than, just being implicit in our heads and thinking that we have that relationship with the other person. Ask about it, talk about it.
And I'm not sure if anyone has anything else they'd like to add for this question here, or if anyone has any closing remarks from the panel. We are running a bit short on time, so if you have anything you'd like to say, feel free to go ahead.
Can I just quickly say that for any of the participants here, if you do have any questions about the federal legislation, or you're looking for tools when something pops up like heat stress or something like that, please feel free to contact us. We're always happy to help with answering questions and giving resources. That's a lot more fun for us than dealing with accidents and that kind of thing. So we're always happy to help. And in the resource material, we've sent our contact information and that kind of thing. So please feel free to reach out.
I guess just a closing thought. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but especially in a time when we all were kind of sent home and we're all kind of in our own spaces and we're not even together physically, what was siloed is even more siloed in some sense, and we can further perpetuate that in our current working environment. And it's really important for us to remember that we're not working alone, that we're not alone in this. And that's exactly why we have a panel, we have experts, we have people in the community that can support us. So remember that we're not alone in it, and that we have people that we can reach out to. And it's really important that we do, because none of this, like a pandemic was not created by one person and it cannot be solved by one person. So we need to be able to work together and remember that we're part of a greater community, that we can tap into all these resources that we have.
And Jennifer or Leona, did you have anything you wanted to close with at all?
No, it's just I really like this aspect of being able to still reach and, you know, having a panel of individuals, everybody has different backgrounds and expertise, and having a group of people from different areas still being able to connect and share different points of views and everything that we've been facing over the last couple of months. So again, thank you for putting this together, and it was nice to see everybody again.
I also just wanted to say thank you to my co-panelists for all the different angles from which these topics were addressed, and all the interesting perspectives shared, and to the Secretariat for putting this together, and just everyone for listening.
Great, and I wanted to thank all of the panelists for joining us here today. You guys had some great insight, and I like the banter back and forth. You guys were really great. And then for our participants, we are going to be heading into a little health break here at 10:30, or maybe a bit earlier if we finish up. But when we return, we're going to be put into some breakout rooms. So everybody, when you come back at 10:45, you'll be automatically put into the breakout room that you signed up with when you registered for this event. And if for some reason you change your mind on which breakout room you'd like to be in, there's going to be a button in the bottom right corner of your screen that'll say leave room. So if you go into a room and you want to change to a different one, just click that button and you'll be put back into the main room, and someone can help you find a different room to go into. I just wanted to say that all of the PowerPoints and handouts from today's session are going to be posted onto Hightail. And I believe a link is going to be put into the chat here. And finally, so this afternoon, we're going to have our breakout rooms. We'll come back for some closing remarks. And then from 12 until 1, we're also going to be having our network event. And that's going to be on Kumo Space. And we'll have Amory explain Kumo Space later today before we get into it. And with that, I think we're pretty good and ready to go into our health break. Unless anyone has any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. But if not, I guess we'll meet back at 10:45 and we'll all be in our breakout sessions. And had some questions. I just want to remind everybody that all of the sessions in the breakout rooms were recorded. So if you want to view them, or there was a room you couldn't attend today, those recordings will be available. I think it's going to be on Hightail. And we wanted to thank all of our presenters today as well. For tomorrow, our plan is going to be, we'll have another round of breakout sessions. And then we will also have a presentation from Dr. Little Bear, followed by some door prizes, as well as some closing remarks from some elders as well. And to close off today, I think we're going to have Amory come on and explain the Kumo Space for our networking event that's going to be taking at 1 o'clock here, or sorry, at 12 o'clock. So maybe I'll pass it over to Amory and you can go ahead and explain Kumo Space to everybody.
Awesome, thanks, Liam. Yeah, so today we thought we would try something a little bit different, but kind of the same. So we're still going to be playing kind of in a virtual environment, but on a website called Kumo Space. So it's just a different kind of like networking tool that we can use. So I'm just going to quickly share a quick screen here. And so what Kumo Space is, it's a website that we're going to go into. And as you can kind of see from the picture here, There's different ways to move yourself around a room. So when you click on, I posted the link to the Kumo space in chat. So when you click on that link, it's going to open up kind of like a virtual corridor. So in that corridor, there's going to be 4 rooms that are set up. So there's a networking room. There's a room that CPHR, BC and Yukon has set up. So today, Quinny Davey will be in that room. So if you wanted to pop in and say hello to Quinny, learn a little bit more about CPHR, you're more than welcome to go into that room as well. But when you're in those rooms, when you click on like the networking or the CPHR room, you'll notice your camera has a little icon there with a circle around it. And to move yourself around the room, you can just use your arrow keys. So up, down, left, right will move you around the room. And then you can go and find somebody who you want to have a chat with, or if you've got questions for a presenter. I did set up a presenter's room if they wanted to go in there. If the main room gets too full, the main room can only accommodate 30 people at a time. That's why we have 4 rooms set up for everyone to meet around with. You can also, if you wanted to zoom in or zoom out of the virtual space itself, you can use your plus or minus keys on your keypad, or in turn, you can push M on your keypad and it'll open a full map layout of that room that you're in virtually, so you can navigate to those people in the room. If you want to leave the room itself, you just walk down to kind of there's a door down at the bottom, or there's an exit room icon that will be located on the bottom of your screen, similar to like the leave meeting participants chat icons that you see in Zoom on the bottom. So they'll be there as well. And the big thing about Kumo Space is, unlike Zoom, not everybody has to sit here and just listen to me talk, because I've got my mic on and I'm kind of, if you're in that speaker view, I'm up. But in Kumo Space, you'll see your video icon and you'll have a circle around it, and you'll only be able to hear conversations from people that fall within your little like radar circle. So as you move around the room, you'll notice that you're picking up some different conversations from different people as you're going around. So that's kind of how we wanted to play with this networking piece as well, is that it's called spatial audio. You only hear conversations from people within that circle, as you can kind of see from this icon here. So yeah, and I think that's really about it that I had for the Kumo Space bit, is just these kind of four little icons that you might need help with. But it's up, down, left, right on your keyboard will move you around the room. The plus and minus will make the map go bigger or smaller, and that you can only hear people talk that are in your circle. So those are the big things there. And then so I'll stop sharing this screen here. And then I think we're going to pass it over now to Michelle. So nobody please log off yet. We do have a couple of door prizes to draw for those in attendance today. So I'll pass it over to Michelle. Thank you.
Michelle, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. We'll be doing a couple prize draws today. It will be a gift card to Massey Books. Massey Books is 100% Indigenous owned and operated bookstore, and is a member to the Stolo Business Association. They find unique and unusual books from around the world and bring them to you. So. Sorry, I'm just trying to share my screen here. Okay, here we go. Valerie. And we'll do one more. Oh.
Actually, I don't think Valerie's here.
Oh, she's not. Okay. I'll spin the wheel one more time. Oh, that was a close one. Congratulations, Doreen. And perhaps I'll do one more since Valerie has left already. So we have Doreen. And Shauna, congratulations. So I will be in touch with you both.
Great, thank you, Michelle. So I think that concludes all of our events that we had for today. And so I guess we'll look forward to seeing everybody back here tomorrow. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. Some of us will be here until 12 o'clock. And with that, I think that's everything. So I guess we'll see a few of you in the Kumo space at 12. And yeah, thanks everybody for attending.